welcome to Catholic Courses. I'm Dr. Paul Niskanen, Associate Professor of Theology at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we're going to be discussing in this course the book of Daniel, primarily addressing its apocalyptic imagery and visions. Now, to begin a discussion of the book of Daniel, it's important to look at a very central question of biblical interpretation. One of the key questions we must ask when looking at anything in the Bible is, what type of literature is it? This is key to correctly interpreting any individual book of the Bible, understanding its genre, its type of literature, so that we can better appreciate what the author is trying to communicate to us through this literature. If you're interested in more on that topic, you can consult my course on God in the Old Testament, or pick up your copy of De Verbum, the dogmatic constitution on divine revelation from the Second Vatican Council, where it lays out this among many other basic principles of biblical interpretation. Now, when we approach the Bible as a collection of books, it's important to remember that it is a collection of various types of literature, different genres. For example, we have books of law, prophecy, wisdom. There are letters, there are historical books, poetical books, all different kinds. When we come to the book of Daniel, we're coming to a very unique book within the Old Testament canon. The book of Daniel is usually classified as an apocalypse, or an exemplar of what we would call apocalyptic literature. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what is apocalyptic literature? What are the characteristics of this type of literature? How should we understand it? Now, part of the difficulty here is that there are a lot of misunderstandings about apocalypses, apocalyptic literature, what they are, and you can see these misunderstandings express themselves in a number of ways. One of the things I like to do at the beginning of a class when I'm teaching undergraduates back at St. Thomas on the book of Daniel is to play a little word association game with them. So you can play this little game with me at home. I say a little something, you say the first thing that comes to your mind. So for example, I might say black. You said white, didn't you? Or I might say dog. If you said tree, you're thinking the same thing I am. But when I say apocalypse, most students come up with responses such as these. They'll say the end of the world, or destruction, war, cataclysm. And these are the types of things that many modern people commonly associate with the idea of apocalypse or apocalyptic literature. Now, part of this is fed by the mass media, of course. It's been very popular in recent decades to make movies with apocalypse in the title or so-called apocalyptic themes. Just some of the few that I can recall, the famous movie Apocalypse Now about the Vietnam War. You know, here you have apocalypse associated with violence, destruction, mayhem, the world kind of falling apart. Or you have movies that take other buzzwords of apocalyptic, such as Armageddon, where Bruce Willis will save the world from an approaching asteroid by drilling into it and blowing it up. Or another key apocalyptic phrase that comes straight out of the book of Daniel, end of days. Now there was a great movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, proving that you need a really big gun if you want to kill Satan. Also very popular in our day and age are zombie themes, the zombie apocalypse. This is when at the end of days, the end of time, all these zombies come up and wreak havoc and mayhem upon the world. That's what a lot of people tend to associate now with the idea of apocalypse. Even in the very language we use, notice I've been saying apocalypse. A lot of times people will speak of the apocalypse with the definite article, as if this is somehow something or some event. Final cataclysmic destruction is usually what people mean when they speak of the apocalypse. The final example I'd like to give is from my mailbag. I didn't bring my mailbag with me, But let me tell you, a few years back, I went out to my mailbox and opened it up, and among my bills and various other ads, I found this nice, very attractive, shiny, full-page, glossy advertisement. And on the front cover, it had this very interesting image. It had a man in a robe with white hair and a white beard, and he was wielding a sword. And curled around there was a long red dragon. And in the background there was the moon, and standing upon the moon was a woman dressed in white, and she wore a crown on her head of 12 stars. If any of this imagery sounds vaguely familiar to some of you, you may be familiar with the fact that it comes directly out of the Bible. It comes out of the New Testament book of Revelation. Another example of apocalyptic literature. A year later, about 1 year later exactly, I went back to my mailbox and opened up, and there was an even larger glossy. They had evidently an increased budget that year, had a larger glossy ad that when I pulled it out of my mailbox and opened it up, I nearly jumped out of my socks. It scared the heck out of me. It was this picture of this huge, enormous beast with glowing eyes and horns coming out all over it and big pointy fangs. And in some smaller side images, there was a lion with 2 wings, and a leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings, and a bear chewing on 3 bones in its mouth. If these images might sound familiar to some of you, it's because they come directly out of the book of Daniel, our Old Testament exemplar of apocalyptic literature. Now, when I opened up this glossy ad, I had to chuckle a little bit to myself because it had all these different apocalyptic buzzwords flying around the page in various sized fonts, such as Apocalypse, Revelation, 666, the Antichrist, the Rapture. And in the background, it had all these images, again, of war and destruction, explosions, tanks, warplanes. And it had a little phrase that said, "The future, will we survive? The Bible has the secret answers." And so a lot of people think that this is what apocalyptic literature is all about. Some secret-coded biblical literature that is revealing some plan of future history that is unfolding in our very midst day by day, and it has a step-by-step blueprint of what's going to happen. Now, if you're beginning to think that this is what apocalyptic literature is all about, put that thought out of your mind. This is not what apocalyptic literature is all about. This is it's come to be our modern misperception of apocalyptic literature. So let's take a step back and see, well, what did this literature mean for the ancient Israelites and early Christians who were writing it? What does apocalypse mean back then? To introduce this point, I have to take on one of my alter egos as the father from my big fat Greek wedding, and once again point out that everything goes back to the Greek. The word apocalypse, what does it mean? It's a Greek word. It comes from the Greek preposition apa, meaning away from, and the Greek noun kalypsis, meaning veil. When this word apocalypsis gets translated into Latin, you have a similar division. The preposition re, meaning to remove or away from, and the noun velatio, meaning veil. So literally, apocalyptic literature, or an apocalypse, is this. It's removing the veil, lifting the veil and unveiling. Apocalyptic literature is primarily veiled or symbolic literature. And most of us today need a little help reading these parts of the Bible. Apocalyptic literature is notoriously the most misinterpreted parts of the Bible, either the book of Daniel in the Old Testament or the book of Revelation in the New, because the imagery is so dense, so thick, we need someone to lift it and reveal the deeper meaning.